You barking up the wrong tree, mother.
Like you, be strong to hold the powers of the sun.
It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Let's listen to Pavarotti.
Can I be your superhero?
Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I'm your host, Pavarotti, and I'm here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. Now, this video might be a little all over the place because I'm going to go over some things that are absolutely in the court record. I'm going to go over some things that I believe happened. Based on the investigation I've conducted into this case, I like to take new things that we learn, apply them to the facts of my investigation, and see if it continues to back up my facts or if there's things that don't line up. And I got to tell you, based on everything that I interpret, it backs everything up 1,000%. Now, one thing I want to talk about, because I know this is something that everybody is all over the place on, is you go through the text messages. The first thing everybody says is, well, these aren't all the text messages. This is obviously, they're just showing the ones they want to. I take issue with that. I really do. The reason I do is because in this filing, this is the text messages of DM that the state is using to assert a timeline. Now, if the state chose to omit messages, the messages the state would have chosen to omit would be the exact messages that they would not want to omit, I assure you. For instance, a message of DM saying, I just seen a guy dressed in black. That is something that they would actually have wanted in there, not wanted to take out, because that would be going along with their narrative. So when those text messages are listed in there and the way that they're listed, I firmly believe that these are the text messages that were pulled off of her phone. You're seeing what you're seeing. Everybody has trouble getting their mind around it because of the fact that they don't add up. There's got to be missing text messages, or they have to be talking to each other on the phone. Maybe there was a phone call in there. They wouldn't go through and list every single dial that was made and every single text that was made between the two if there was other communications. It just doesn't make sense. What doesn't make sense to everybody is what they're seeing. Well, but it makes sense to me. You see, when I seen it, it made perfect sense. Everybody else assumes there's something taken out. But one of the reasons it makes really good sense to me, and that's why I tried to make it very, very apparent as I went through the times during going over those text messages, the times of the calls, the times of the text messages, and how there wasn't any time in between them. And I know everybody tries to rationalize it. Well, those are text messages. They didn't come in the right order. Okay, well, I'll tell you a little something about old PAV, okay? Old PAV, for about 13 years, ran businesses. In those businesses, I had 3 businesses at one point. All 3 of them had 12-man call centers. I was pretty dang good at managing the call centers because those businesses would slap about a $40,000 to $50,000 a month a piece for each business advertising wide on you every month. You couldn't control it because the corporate office actually controlled advertising. You just got the bill. So with that advertising, you had to turn the leads that you got from that advertising into revenue, or you would go under quick. So the only way you could proficiently do that was to manage a call center very well. And I was one of the best, I promise you, in the country on that. They would send all the owners of all the different businesses. I had to sit there with them, each one of them, for 2 weeks in my businesses, training them how to do it. At one point, I opened a 60-man call center in the Philippines, and I had that for about 2 years. But one of the things that I was very good at in managing those call centers was their call detail reports. You see, there was a process that we'd follow, and I would teach it to them. I'd say, look, when you make a phone call, you let the phone ring 3 times, all right? Because you're calling customers. If you let the phone ring more than 3 times, then they kind of get mad at you. But if you don't let it ring 3 times, then they're probably not going to answer it. So the perfect call was a 3-ring call. And when I looked at a call detail record on every call that a person made during the day, and I would do this for the people in the businesses and for those 60 people in the Philippines, I had all their call detail records. And I would go through and I would pick out a couple each day, and I'd go through their records. In every single call, and I'm talking about they'd make hundreds of calls, but I knew that a 30-second call was a proper call. 30 seconds told me that they dialed and let the phone ring 3 times, and then they hung up and went on to the next call. If I seen a call that was only 12 or 15 seconds, well, then I would click on it and listen to it, and it better be a busy signal, because what those people would do is they would get bored, wouldn't pay attention. They'd start acting like they were making calls, and they'd hang up before the people answered, or they would just not pay attention, let the phone ring 6 or 7 times. So if I seen a call that was about 50 seconds, I'd click on it and I'd listen to how many times they let the phone ring, and inevitably they would let the phone ring 2 extra times. So I knew down to the second, what to look for in a call record, so I could click on it. And if it wasn't exactly right, then I could bring that person in and go, all right, look what happened right here. Let them know that you're looking at it. And once you let somebody know you're looking at it, then they're a lot more apt to do what they're supposed to do and stay focused. Now, I know that's a whole lot of talk that goes into it, but the reason I wanted to say that is because when I looked through these phone calls that they were making and the text messages, I know how long a phone call is to somebody that's not responding. And when it says they made 4 calls to each one of the people in the house, well, then those are probably, if they're trying to actually get them to answer their phone, they're probably letting that phone ring 4 to 5 times. Those are 45 to 50 second calls a piece. So when you look at the timeline of the text and the calls, there's really no time for any other text or calls to have happened. And here's the other thing that you got to keep in mind, because as you're looking at all that, in your mind, you're probably picturing all these different people. There's only 2 people in that house, according to law enforcement at this time, that was alive. It's just DM and BF. Even though they're calling the other people, you got to focus your mind. It's just DM and BF. They're not having a phone conversation as they're texting each other. It's only those 2. So the reason I believe, now I could be wrong, maybe something did happen before then, but if it's only DM and BF and they're listing every text and phone call that DM is making and receiving, I got to believe that that's all there is. So when you're looking at, when I look at it, what I see is this. The reason that those texts come out the way they do is because you've got at least 2 people, I firmly believe 3, are there together, and they're going through and they're saying, okay, all right, text this. All right, make these calls. All right, text this. They're putting it together. They're trying to set up their alibi with each other. And I believe they're being directed. And the person I believe that's directing them is DM's boyfriend. I believe he was there. As I contemplate everything that I believe that went on, these are professionals. When I say professionals, professional criminals. All right, I believe professional criminals did this. They had their inside person, DM. The reason they had their inside person is because of her boyfriend. I believe he was there because I don't believe that he would let them go in and do that and just believe that they wouldn't hurt her. I believe he would have been there just to make sure that she got protected. So I believe they're sitting there all together completing these calls and these text messages to set something up, set up a timeline. And I know a lot of y'all out there believe these things that start happening at 2 o'clock and all that. I'm sorry, I just disagree. I believe the assailants went into that house between 3:50 and 4 a.m. I believe everybody was gone except for one of them until 4:37 a.m. I believe that BF left the house at 4:33, and I believe that DM left the house right before 4:37. And I'm going to give you some evidence to back that up in this video. I've gone through and taken a lot of things to see if it vetted out, and it really does vet out everything very, very well when you look at the facts and the evidence around the case. So let's take a look at just a few things that I'm talking about first as it relates to that. I'll show you what I got, and then we'll get into a court doc or two that really backs up old Pob's investigation. Okay, just taking some of the finer points from those text messages. We start over here with the first one that comes into play at 4:19:07. DM makes 4 calls to BF, Xana, Kaylee, and Maddie. And it takes 2 minutes and 43 seconds for these 4 calls to be made. And that is the proper time that it would take to call 4 people that does not answer their phones. But then we got at 4:22 and 8 seconds. You know, you're talking 18 seconds later, DM and BF text others and each other. All right, so it says DM and BF text others and each other. Who are the others that they're texting? Well, it's DM's not texting others because we've got all of her texts from her phone. BF is the one that's texting others, but who is she texting? Is it people inside or outside of the house? And this happens between 4:22:08 and 4:24:27, 2 minutes and 19 seconds. And we've seen those 17 texts between the two of them. Then DM calls Ethan from 4:24:39 to 4:24:58. Now, again, this is only a 19-second call. This is a red flag. When she calls Ethan and only lets the phone ring 19 seconds, she only lets the phone ring about 1.5 rings. So this right here is not her, I believe, trying to actually get in touch with Ethan. This is farcical right here. This is not a real attempt. All right, then we've got DM's last call to Maddie, then her last call to Xana. Last call to Maddie was 4:27:47. And then 45 seconds later, her last call to Xana, 4:28:44. And then there is a time lapse. Now, when I pull up the Linda Lane footage and turn that volume up, you actually can hear Murphy start barking on the Linda Lane camera just after 4:30 a.m., and it's very apparent. So it tells me when you plug this stuff in and you cross-reference it, everything lines up perfect. This last call to Xana is right before, I believe, BF is getting ready to leave. And that's why the door opens up. They let Murphy out, and you can hear Murphy start barking. And then right before BF leaves, DM makes a last text to Kaylee at 4:32:57. I showed you in a video yesterday what happens when you take 4:32:57, the last text from DM to Kaylee. I believe she's texting that right as BF is leaving. And when you look at the Linda Lane footage, exactly less than a minute later, you see that vehicle cross the Linda Lane footage. And let's see, 4:44:45, there she goes, 4:46, like we'd expect to see it. But after that, I believe a few minutes later, that is when actually DM really does see somebody change into their underwear and leave out of the house at the same time that her and I believe her boyfriend leave out of the house, right at 4:37. And then we see them crossing the Linda Lane intersection just about 45 seconds later. Yep, so we would expect to see them right about, oh, there they are right there at 4:37 and 51 seconds. Okay, so then my assumption is when they left, so did the last perpetrator. And it's always been my assumption that the first perpetrator we see go past the dumpster at Linda Lane at 3:15, he was already in place when the other two got there to go in, and he's the last one to leave. And if he leaves out of the house around 4:37 and does what I believe him to do, which is go through the woods, all the way through the wood line, and somewhere in here where he had his backpack sitting, he's in his underwear carrying his bag of clothes. He puts it in his backpack, gets his other clothes out of his backpack, changes into his clean clothes, and then continues on through the wood line all the way out to Linda Lane, where he would pop out here at 4:49, and that's exactly 880 feet. So it would be about 22 minutes for him to make this trek, change clothes before he pops out here at 4:49. And you know, his pickup guy was already circling around waiting on him. Here he comes past Linda Lane right there at 4:55 and 4:56 and 1 second. So he made the block and then picked him up because he didn't turn left right there. So you seen that vehicle drive past here at 4:55. He doesn't make the left and go up Blake. He continues straight. And if you take it and you just simply make that block and then you come back down Blake, back up and into Linda Lane, that's exactly 1.09 miles in this block. So you got a 5-minute span to make this block to come back into Linda Lane, and then we see him pulling into Linda Lane at 5:01. So you can see I've got it sped up here. He walks out at 4:59, texts his ride that is already driven by and is making the block right now. And if we look up here, see on Blake, you're going to start to see some headlights come over that hill. All he did was make the block. So let's wait for it. Let's wait for it. Where is it at? Where is it at? He's sitting there waiting on y'all. Where are you at? Oh, there they come right over the hill like they're supposed to on Blake from making that block. And they come down, turn, pull in, pick him up. And what does he say? That's it. And then he puts it in reverse and pulls out of there. Now he's not going to turn on Blake again. He's going to go straight, I believe, straight down to Wasankari Construction. And when you put the two dumpster guys side by side, here he is on the left as he's going in at 3:15. Here he is on the right as he's coming out at 4:59. Nobody's telling me that isn't the same guy. And you see, whenever I look at everything that I've investigated into this case, it is absolutely backed up every step of the way, everything that we see. If we've got the Aryan family trafficking narcotics, we know at that very time to Spokane, over to Coeur d'Alene, down through Moscow to Julietta, all the way down to Boise, to the Aryan Knights. And then part of the Aryan Knights, their son, his girlfriend, double connects everything to this case. And right before this thing happened, we've got these folks right here drop dime on this guy, one of the main people to bridge the gap between the two groups. They drop dime on him, and look who he is connected to. He got his cousin's husband right here. His uncle right here, who's best friends with the university president, who shows power, expresses his power over the judge, the prosecutor. I mean, to not understand this, I don't know what I have to do to show folks this. And whenever you do what these two did to this guy, it is absolutely going to send these types of folks to send a message, because they were building a multi-million-dollar operation, and they're not going to let people like this mess it up when omerta is their absolute pledge. They have all the experience from prison with knives and how to unalive people with knives. And they not only had the opportunity and the motive, but we've put everybody in the proximity of the crime. Now, when you put all that together, though, and then you start to add in some of the things we're seeing in the court docs now, then your eyes really start to open up. But that's where the next video comes into play. You see, in the next video, we're going to go over two of the new filings, one being the defense's motion to preclude the death penalty due to lack of discovery. And I'm going to point out some things. That's a 30-page filing, okay? And I'm going to point out some things in that one that will absolutely blow your mind. And if you've been with me for a long time, you know there's certain things that we have investigated in this case. As I go through that doc, I mean, it's truly going to start to make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. And there's another doc that came out that we'll also touch on. It's a very short one, very simple one. And it's called a motion to extend the protective order. And we're going to discuss what that one is about and why that one would come about at this point in time. Kind of strange. But the thing that I hope everybody understands is for 2.5 years now, almost everything in this case has been sealed, been hidden from us. We are finally starting to get the veil pulled back, and we're starting to see some of those things that we suspected all along. But it's only the beginning. They just started pulling back the veil. We're beginning to see things like text messages and 911 calls that we thought we would never see. We're getting to see things like photos of the 1112 King Road camera that we thought we would never see. We're getting to see things like lab reports that show not only Q1.1, the DNA on the knife sheath. If you look in the lab reports on some of these docs now, you'll see that they actually give you exactly how much DNA was in the sample. Everybody's always, it's this many picograms and all that. Oh yeah, they give you the exact amount that was in that sample. I'll be covering that in future videos. Then we've got obviously the DNA on under the fingernails of Maddie that contained 2 unknown DNAs, and neither one are Brian Kohberger's. It was independently tested by the lab and excluded Brian Kohberger. And then you listen to these people in the mainstream morons. I mean, they literally will say, well, yeah, but she could have got that DNA under her fingernails from anywhere during the day. She's a college student. Oh, really? Well, let me tell you, any other case I've ever heard of where somebody was unalived with anything other than a firearm, if they have DNA under their fingernails of a suspect, those people are gone for the rest of their life. Best evidence in the world. But now we're going to come up with excuses like, well, that could have got under there anyway. But the knife sheath, the same skin cells on the knife sheath that doesn't have a knife in it, no, that's got to be the unalivened weapon, and whoever's DNA is on that couldn't have got there any other way, and he's guilty. But the DNA under the fingernails, anybody that could have got there anywhere. She could have been, scratching somebody's butt. Come on. It is perplexing to me. But then we learn that they swabbed the DNA on the knife sheath on the other parts of the sheath that actually had blood on it, tested positive for blood. Oh yeah. And people that think that's not true will go ahead and look in the court docs. It's called Q1.4. So then it makes you start to think, when Ann Taylor says blood on the handrail, B, blood in a glove, D, well, what is C? We know what 1 is. What is C? What is unknown male C? Well, I think that's going to come to us as well, but a lot of other things are going to come to us before this trial, such as the alternate suspects, the co-defendant. There's a lot coming our way. But in the meantime, please like and subscribe to the channel. Post your comments, thoughts, your criticisms, and until next time, Pavarotti is out.